Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with another Total War Warhammer video. Today we'll be looking at missing units, or better said, monsters from the Monstrous Arcanum expansion. These are various great beasts, monsters, elementals and so on that could feature in the Total War Warhammer series. Indeed, we already have a few that already do. So without further ado, let's begin. The Monstrous Arcanum is an expansion pack to the Warhammer Fantasy universe, where great beasts that were normally introduced via Forge World could be used in your ordinary armies. Some, like the Bile Trolls of Chaos, were considered quite faction-specific, while other units would be able to be used by a multitude of factions. Some units of this expansion have already been included into Total War Warhammer, such as the Skin Wolves, so we'll obviously not cover them, and there's a few different units, while not in the game so far, they are more than likely to appear in the future in Total War Warhammer 3, such as the Bale Taurus, the Bull Centaurs and so on, which are actually tied to the Chaos Dwarves. But let's start checking out the more unique units. First we have the Incarnate Elemental of Fire, the Red Wind of Magic made manifest. Pure absolute destruction which is immune to fire damage and radiates flame across the battlefield. This elemental has two special rules, the first one being Ashes to Ashes, which makes it nigh invulnerable to fire damage. And finally Gift of Fire, which was an area of effect debuff which could make black powder weapons explode and have its users take damage. This should be a summoned unit, available to any army who has access to the Lore of Fire. Since this is a Titan-based unit, it should only be summoned in every few turns, maybe every 30 or 40 turns, and potentially have the chance to permanently kill the wizard that summons it. The same could be said about the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts, raw bestial power given physical form. This creature only has one special rule, however it's quite an interesting one. Howl of the Great Beast. This essentially forces a panic test on all nearby enemies at -2 leadership. How I see this being implemented into Total War Warhammer is in a very easy way, to be honest. A map-wide debuff to all leadership of your enemy army, maybe just for a few seconds, but even just for 5 or 6 seconds could really turn the tide of the battle. Next we have the Colossal Squig. Not much to say here, only available to the greenskin factions of course, and it's just a massive squig. But this is like the Warhammer Fantasy equivalent to the Squig-Off. It's absolutely huge and it just looks amazing, so why wouldn't anyone want this? We're back looking at Incarnate Elementals again with the Incarnate Elemental of Death, the Cold Embrace of the Void. Once again another strange Titanic-like creature which has the following special rules. The first one being Consume Life, which as it kills it regains health, which could be translated as a new form of regeneration. Its second special rule is Amethyst Fog. Basically this translates to a area effect constant damage attack. So as long as any enemies are near it, they'll take constant damage. And lastly, it's the Hourglass of Shaiish, which is a massive area effect damage that can only be used once per game. Anything around the area, friend or foe, will take damage. Massive damage at that. Think of it as the destructive powers of, say, Ikit Claw's nukes. Which, you know, would be really cool to see in another form, and being only able to use it once would be quite interesting. You'd have to really plan when to use this. And now we look towards the Basilisk, an incredibly fast close combat monstrous beast. Aquatic, terror-causing and poisonous, it is said that the gaze of a basilisk can reduce any enemy, no matter how powerful they are, to a steaming pile of polluted flesh. Next is the Dreadmaw, a subterranean serpentine-like creature which is commonly seen throughout the Chaos Wastes. The only problem I actually see with this monster is how its special rule could be implemented. This monster is considered a tunneler, which naturally means it could go underground and so on. However, so far any units which have something similar, for example a lot of Tomb King monsters, can't actually go underground. It could be possible instead this monster could be given the Vanguard special rule to represent that it's tunneled off ahead, and since it's very durable in melee combat it should be able to hold the line whilst the rest of your forces catch up. The Brood Horror itself is one of those rare instances. It could be a monstrous beast but also a mount for any Skaven warlord. It's a fast monster, quite decent in close combat and very decently durable, and while it might not be the most iconic of Skaven monsters, it's still one of the better looking ones. Out of all the creatures in this book, it's the Exalted Vermin Lord which I don't actually see getting implemented into the game, purely because it's a Vermin Lord. That's it. It's just a high point costing Vermin Lord which pretty much does everything the normal Vermin Lord does, and more than likely we'll get the end times variants of the Vermin Lords if they ever get added into the game. The Cursed Ettin is perhaps one of the more interesting and complex units in this book, purely because whilst it is a single entry into the book, it technically turns into various different variations. First you'd have to decide which head is in control of this beast, either the Betrayer or the Savage, both pretty much helping you in combat. But then you have further upgrades. First the Gibraltar, which would reduce the leadership of the enemies nearby. Next would be the Scaled Horror, which would give it poison attacks and more scaly armor to protect itself. Next would be the Mancipher, which would probably give it more faster attack speed in this case. And lastly Runecaller, which would make it a very basic low-level spellcaster either of the Law of Shadows, Death or Beasts. So with just one unit you end up with a few others. Yeah, granted there'll be reskins, but they're monstrous beasts, so you could have some fun with it. A personal favourite for this book is the Khemrian Titan, which is a Titan unit based only for the Tomb Kings. It's a giant beetle and it looks amazing. This is the ultimate durable monster. It's not the best at dealing damage, but it's there to hold the line. It's very multi-purpose for what it is, especially for a Tomb King construct. It's a caster, it's got fast movement, it's got strong attacks, but very low weapon skill, but it's very durable and should have a large amount of HP. The Titan itself should have access to 3 bound spells. Firstly, the Gaze of Dust, which is a generic magic missile. Secondly, the Wrath of the Sands, which is a hex spell which should reduce the accuracy of ranged units. And lastly, Reawakening of Ancient Might, a healing spell that could only be cast upon itself. Honestly, is this not just one of the coolest models you've ever seen? Like, seriously, this should definitely be in Total War at some point. Next we have the Rogue Idol of Gork, or possibly Mork. There's not really much that could be said here, to be honest. They are living stone idols, built to venerate Gork or Mork. They're very durable in close combat, fairly decent toughness and decent health. Well, they're made of stone of course, but that's pretty much it. In all honesty, I see the Colossal Squig being far more useful than these, but hey, anything helps. Next we have the Shard Dragon, which is a subterranean type of dragon. It does not fly, however, but instead is a wall crawler. These are super fast, they'll be able to move around areas underground with no problem, and should be able to climb over walls. Unfortunately, at this moment, we really don't have any units that can actually do that in Total War Warhammer, but it would be something interesting to be introduced. Next is the Merwyrm, which we technically have the model for it already. I'm not too sure why we haven't seen it, considering that it had a big focus in the Vampire Coast DLC, and it is a very known monster. I was honestly expecting this to be released with the Vampire Coast in terms of like a secret unlock or something. It's already there. A fast-moving, close combat aquatic beast with regeneration and poison attacks. It pretty much does everything. Next is the Preyton, which essentially is like the Incarnate of Beast just in a lighter form. It's got very similar rules to it, it does pretty much exactly the same stuff as it, but it's really cool, isn't it? Like, look at it. These are native to the lands of Bretonnia, and I could see a special unlock mechanic where you could only get them after raising certain cities in Bretonnia whilst playing as the Warriors of Chaos or Beastmen. These are the two factions that make the most sense with this monster. We're getting close to the end now, but now we look towards the Arcane Phoenix. It is important to note here that a lot of these units do feel like reskins, but they are unique models at the end of the day. Nonetheless, the Arcane Phoenix is another Phoenix unit, but this one works towards buffs. It does more damage against undead and demonic units, it inspires high elves with higher leadership, it makes them do more damage and gives them frenzy attacks, and it has a pretty interesting movement special rule known as Ember Storm, which essentially makes it move quite far and quite fast. Anything that it flies over will take damage, and if it lands on an enemy target, it will be considered as in close combat. This could work quite well in Total War Warhammer. Anything that it flies over it could do damage to. It would be quite interesting to see how you could position it in such a way that you could do massive amounts of damage towards your enemy. Now we look towards yet another dragon with the Warpfire dragon. Yep, another dragon. I know it's getting a little bit boring here, but this one's quite fun. So this is a dragon that's had a bit too much contact with Warpstone, which has changed it dramatically. It would have a few fire breath attacks and so on, but this is where it gets a bit more fun. Warpfire Aura makes it be able to do constant damage to anything around it, and lastly, since it's ingested so much volatile Warpstone, it would explode upon death, dealing massive amount of damage to anything in the area. It's essentially a dragon suicide bomb if you want to use it as such. It is absolutely powerful, and honestly, it's one of the models that I'm very proud to have in my collection. But finally we're at the last unit, the Magma Dragon, an ancient type of dragon which is very resilient to damage, especially fire damage. It's quite tough itself, has loads of scales to protect it, more so than others, and has the benefit of regeneration. They have a special rule known as Brimstone Fire, which is said to be one of the most powerful fire breaths in all of dragonkind. An interesting way this could be implemented is maybe having it as a permanent addition to the battlefield until the battle is over. so then you and your enemy would both have to plan around how to move your forces to avoid the flames. Honestly, the main reason I wanted to cover the Monstrous Arcanum is because there's so many different types of beasts here, which aren't represented in Total War Warhammer. And yeah, I've seen in the forums that people are kind of sick of the different dragon type units because they mostly look the same, but there's actually a lot of variants that act very differently, which is why I wanted to show this section off. I'd like to see these monsters added into the game, maybe as hired units, maybe as summoned units. It's very hard to tell with these things because they're really situational, and many of these actual monsters weren't largely unknown by most of the Warhammer Fantasy tabletop players. They were Forge World units, and they were kinda rare to see. But what do you guys think about these monsters? Would you like to see them in Total War Warhammer? Are there any that I might have missed that you'd like to see? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion, shall we? But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below, we have various different social media links, such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord, where you can get in contact with the Great Book team. Also in the description section below is an affiliate link with Element Games, where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Purchasing from this link and also using our special code, which is also in the description below, supports the channel at no extra cost to you. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a high level of content. A special thank you to our patron Gibraltar LUSC for subscribing to us at our fame level. Honestly, mate, you're super cool. And a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's amazing to be able to talk to so many Warhammer fans across the globe. The channel's been growing a lot lately and it's all thanks to you guys. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again. And I shall see you all again very soon. Have a good day.